Good morning, everyone, and welcome into another edition of WST Sunday Live. My name is Hrabchak, and today I'm joined by Lyss, Houde, and we have an awesome show. The Winnipeg Jets defeating the Minnesota Wild 5-0 last night. It was WST night. We'll hit that right off the top. Incredible sold-out crowd. 5-0 win on a Saturday night. Doesn't get much better than that. Lyss, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. It was pretty nice to get that eighth consecutive win over the Minnesota Wild and be done with them for the year. I guess if they're free wins at this point, it's too bad that the Jets are done with them for the year, but pretty nice to secure that one off with the W. It seems like the Jets have had their number lately. They put on a good show on Hockey Night in Canada, scoring a couple of real big ones and keeping their foot on the gas for the full 60.
Back-to-back Hockey Night in Canada wins. That is legit. That is fun. And this is a photo. The five of us, Jacob unable to make it this morning. He was actually pretty ill. Woke up pretty sick. So we're giving him the day off. We're giving him the morning off at least. But yeah, it was awesome seeing everyone there before the game. I saw a ton of photos come out of Section 316 there. And after the game, obviously everyone in high spirits with the win. But yeah, it was awesome to see everyone before the game. Thank you to everyone who came down. The next WST ticket night is January 16th. Against the Seattle Kraken. That's in the middle of like an 8-game homestand. So if you want to join us, grab your tickets, and that should be another really fun night down at Canada Life Center. Not Hockey Night in Canada against the Minnesota Wild with a 5-0 win. Maybe the 5-0 win part will stick, but yeah, it was great to see everyone. I see Matt Hyman. He was there. We met him. That was awesome. And so many other people here with us live in chat. Les Thompson, Sammy Smokes, Scardy, Kim Sawchuk, Choices TK. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here bright and early on a Sunday morning after the Jets beat the Wild 5-0. Lyss, what was your initial takeaways from last night's game with the Jets, like you said, 8th straight win against the Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone listened to post-game media, it was pretty clear that a lot of the players and a lot of those of us who were at the game chatting with one another about it. The first period was the best part of the game. The Winnipeg Jets have struggled to start games really sharp and really well in the last stretch. So coming out guns a-blazing was really, really nice to see from the team, getting a couple of really big goals early in the game to sort of because it's important not just to start by playing well, but also to secure a couple of those goals when you are playing well, because it can be super disheartening to start off playing a really, really solid 20-40 minute effort just to get scored on by a poor bounce, and it can deflate you quite easily. So I thought they had both parts, which was, playing super well to start that game, but then also getting a couple of insurance goals early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Choices TK basically saying the same thing. Good start to the game. Jets came out and did exactly what you should against an injured, slumping, tired Wild team that's having trouble scoring. That is 100%. The Minnesota Wild missing Joel Eriksson and Jacob Middleton and Philip Gustafson. So they're number one center. They're Dylan Sandberg clone, if you want, in Jacob Middleton, top 4 left-handed defenseman, defensive defenseman, and their star goalie who has like a 920 save percentage this year.
Yeah, he's
and is playing great. So it was, and they had lost 3 straight in regulation coming into this game. And then now it's 4 straight, obviously, in regulation that they've lost. But yeah, the Wild are slumping.
Their last 6 too, I think.
Oh yeah, they're slumping, and to jump on them early, especially after how Anaheim went on Wednesday with the Jets having like 4 shots on goal through the first, I want to say 35 minutes of that game. Shots were 18-4 for Anaheim. Good starts were obviously an emphasis, and these are human beings, and a Saturday night Hockey Night in Canada against one of their biggest rivals. But Scardy raises a good point. Like, usually a rivalry is a little back and forth. This is just the Jets dominating. Like, that's just a free win on the bingo card every single game. It's kind of ridiculous.
And if you remember how there were some Kirill Kaprizov trade rumors earlier in the season, and we know that Logan Stanley may not be in Winnipeg forever. What if they got rid of Kaprizov and Hartman? The Jets got rid of Logan Stanley, and they win the next 2 games against them. Rivalry done, man. That's it.
There'd be like no penalties. It would be the most respectful Jets Wild game ever.
Literally.
There was, like, again, Jets and Wild sometimes gets into the rough stuff. And yesterday there was a little bit, like, Kirill Kaprizov attacked Dylan DeMello just randomly in the first period.
Early in the game when they still had a bit of hope, right? And it was ridiculous, but it was silly. But it was dumb. But I also feel like I could see Winnipeg Jets superstars doing that exact same thing, where they feel like, you know, your big tough guy isn't here. I'm going to stand up for myself. You guys have wronged me. It's like, all right, whatever, relax. Like Logan Stanley
Exactly.
would trip over you and you would find a way to, it's like NBA style injury, like day to day with like a sore thumb or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Oh
come
yeah.
on, he's not doing anything that crazy. Let's be real.
Yeah, and you did mention Logan Stanley. We do have to say that he is out last night's game and tomorrow's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He blocked a shot off his foot in that game against Anaheim. And in came Ville Heinola on that third pair alongside Colin Miller because the Moose sent down Dylan Coughlin the other day to the Moose along with Nikita Chibrikov. So a lot of moving parts in the Jets roster. But here's what Scott O'Neill had to say about the play of Heinola and Miller. And then Lyss and I will discuss our thoughts after.
I think that, like you mentioned, there's things that they're continuing to grow together. That's Ville being back on the left side. He'd been playing the right with Stan. So, just familiarity playing with Millsy. I think, just like you said, there's some good things that we'll look at and that they can build on. There's some other areas that they just got to continue to, improve. And, we don't stress them out too much in the sense of, getting them thinking all about the bad things. We want to continue to build on the positives. And, I think they're just the growth there. I think Millsy helps, Ville in those situations. So there's lots of good going on. They got lots of minutes, which help too.
So there it is, Scott O'Neill on Ville Heinola and Colin Miller. And he said two things in that answer that really stuck out to me. The first one was Ville Heinola being on his left side. And then the second one later in the quote about how Colin Miller helps Ville Heinola and how those two, well, he didn't say that those two work well together, but I think we could all kind of see it. They did have one rough defensive shift in the second period, which was maybe the Jets' worst shift of the game. I mean, the most pressure maybe the Wild had at 5-on-5 in the entire game. That pairing did turn the puck over 2 or 3 times on that, kind of sequence. But outside of that, I thought Heinola and Miller played a really strong game on the third pair. What did you see, Lyss?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were good, and I think it's the sort of game that, you can nitpick a little bit, but at the end of the day, the entire team played really well, and no one is excluded from that, in my opinion, right? Like, they all contributed to the team managing that game really well. I think as far as that pairing goes, Ville Heinola, we know exactly what he's really good at. That exit, that control when leaving the zone is something that doesn't always sound conducive to the style of player that you think that Ville Heinola is. You think he might be a bit more chaotic. You think he might be a little bit more, jumping too much into offense. He's very controlled when leaving the zone. However, when others fail to exit the zone, it's your responsibility to manage the situation that they've put you in. And he doesn't always do that the best, right? So that's where he struggles a tad more. But I mean, hey, he had a couple of really, really nice passes in the game, a couple of just so nice and controlled. And that's why defensemen are difficult, not just to evaluate, but to criticize and to talk about when they're playing well. And this was the Dylan DeMello thing for years, right? Is that just the small little chips out of the zone and just leaving the zone with a little bit more control than just a big dump in once you get to the opposing blue line, then, having to fight for the puck in the neutral zone. The more control you can add to your possession, the more likely you are to generate a scoring chance off the rush, which is something the Winnipeg Jets desperately need to do. So having those little positive touches to get them there is really positive.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And Ville Heinola made a really nice pass to Nikolai Ehlers, which sprung him in on the rush, and Ehlers got a great chance off of it in the game as well. I liked the majority of their game, and sorry, there was a comment I wanted to highlight here. Yes, Tom saying that great week coming up, Jets, Leafs, Christmas, World Juniors, Spengler Cup. We are going to talk about Braden Yeager and the World Juniors a little bit later on in the show, so stick around. But yeah, awesome week ahead, of course. Christmas time, holiday season, fun times for everyone. And we get to kick it off with Jets Leafs at 1:00 tomorrow. I know some people might be working at 1:00 on a Monday. That's not Christmas Eve yet, right? So that'll be interesting. But I don't, okay, as someone who is done school for the term, I don't hate it. I know a lot of people do, but we'll see. It'll be a good game. A few numbers from last night's game. I was perusing natural stat trick as I usually do after the game. Every single forward line was above 65% in expected goals percentage. So
that's bonkers.
Scott O'Neill after the game said that this was the first time in a while that he thought all 4 lines were rolling. That is a fact. All 4 lines dominated their minutes, controlled their minutes, over 65% in expected goals percentage. Really, really solid. It was the Jets' fourth best expected goals against performance at 5-on-5 in a game this season. They allowed only 1.07
I
expected
actually
goals
thought it'd be
against.
even better,
Yeah,
but
because a lot of
it
the
was
Wild, a lot of their offense came on the power play, but the Jets also killed 4-for-4. So
true.
it was just a really strong defensive performance, right? Fourth highest in a game this season for the Jets at 5-on-5. Also at 5-on-5, they generated 11 high danger chances. And as of late, we know that their offense generation has been a problem. This is only the third time in the last 13 games that they've reached 11 high danger chances or higher at 5-on-5. So one of the best offensive performances in the last bit as well. It was their second highest expected goals for total in a game since at Chicago, which was December 7th. And if you remove that game from everyone's memory, all the history books, it was at Pittsburgh, November 22nd. So it was their second highest expected goals for in a single game in the last month and a half, or month to the day, actually, if you're talking about Pittsburgh with November 22nd. And 4 high danger chances against at 5-on-5. That's their third best performance of the season. So not only offensively did they generate a lot of offense and high danger chances. And the first period, they had 9 high danger chances total, which was the best first period they've had in a long time. But defensively as well, 5-on-5, one of their best performances of the season. And then the penalty kill went 4-for-4 as well, Lyss.
Yeah, no, it was a very solid team effort, right? And I think that's the sort of thing that it does feel a little bit like surface level commentary, but it is important to bring it up when, flowers are due for the team in that sense. And we've spoken about how, the top line as of late has been really, really strong and everything. And it's okay if you're playing against a strong team and the Adam Lowry line is perhaps getting caved a little bit because they're just trying to manage and survive and do anything to neutralize the huge offensive opponents that are some of the juggernauts in the league. And then the top line goes out and scores, and you can see that discrepancy. But in a game like this, where Minnesota's a bit more of a balanced team, obviously they do have guys who are a little bit more of a superstar than others. Scott O'Neill mentioned by number Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello in the postgame, right? So obviously they're watching out for certain guys. Minnesota has a little bit more of a balanced lineup, in my opinion. Success by committee, right? The same way that the Jets kind of operate. You want to see this exact result, right? Which is each guy winning their matchup. Obviously, this was a little bit more by a landslide, which is really nice to see at times. But the recipe and the formula was still the right call and the right outcome, even though it was a little bit, this was a bit more accentuated. This is a little bit more dramatic, but this is the sort of thing that you want to see from this group against a team like this.
Yeah, and the top line more or less had the night off in terms of production. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers got the goal on the top power play, but at 5-on-5, they were actually like I said, all 4 lines had above 65%, but they generated kind of the least in terms of like per their minutes. So they didn't have the best night. But if you go back to that San Jose game, they were really the only reason they were in that game was the top line and their ability to generate. So the top line is still doing this kind of up and down thing. But on a night like tonight, last night when the Jets won 5-0 without the top line, you kind of get back to what we saw the first 16 games of the year with that depth showing through time and time again. And Darth Skater bringing up here, Morgan Barron ready for shooting on goaltenders because he scored his first with a goalie in the net and first at even strength. Because both of those were shorthanded. But Morgan Barron finally on the board, his third of the season, first goal against a goalie this year. And Mike McIntyre asked him after the game, somewhat against a goalie. Wallstedt was kind of sliding out of the crease, but Mike McIntyre asked him about the game, if any of the players were giving him the gears for not scoring a goal on a goaltender this year. And here's what Morgan Barron had to say about that and his goal.
On a goaltender yet this year?
No, everyone's been pretty polite about it until you. So,
and it kind of was an empty net, right? That you ended up scoring on.
Yeah, it was. Listen, I'll take any of them. So they're all good.
Yeah, nice to get some balanced scoring. I mean, really every line contributed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously important. And there's been times throughout this year when we probably haven't produced as much as we would have liked to. And at the start of the year, it's a little easier when we're in most nights. But as soon as we kind of started losing a few more games, and obviously we've been through a little bit of a tough stretch for our own standard, I think it's a little tougher. So it's good to contribute, and hopefully we can kind of keep rolling.
So there's Morgan Barron giving Mike McIntyre the gears for asking that question, but I love it. He's all over it. And yeah, it kind of was an empty net, funny enough. But what did you see? The fourth line, obviously, they get the goal, so they're going to get talked about. The production needed to follow for that line. But did you see anything else from them at 5-on-5? I really liked Morgan Barron's penalty killing in this game. I thought he was super effective on the PK and was a big reason for the 4-for-4. What did you see from those three, as David Gustafsson also got in the lineup on that fourth line?
Yeah, I mean, I think from that quote in particular, I really like that Morgan Barron kind of addresses by their own standard, right? Because this line has been an NHL fourth line since game one at the worst of times. They're fine. Like they've had the odd shift here and there, the odd game here and there where they're suboptimal. Like I totally get it. But in terms of, hey, if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, you've been watching Winnipeg Jets hockey, COVID era Winnipeg Jets, slightly post-COVID era Winnipeg Jets, you'd have died to have had this fourth line on your team at that time, right? Like this fourth line has been significantly better than some of the Winnipeg Jets of late. However, by their own standard, right, which is what he brings up in that quote, they haven't been producing to the caliber that we know that they can. Morgan Barron cracked 10 goals last year, I'm pretty sure. We know that he has some more offensive upside that isn't quite being tapped into at this time. Rasmus Kupari has had a bit more of an effective season, in my opinion, and by my standard this season compared to last. Alex Iafallo is a very versatile player who has kind of found a nice fit with those players, and they want more from themselves. They're not satisfied with where they're at. So goals like that, you can tell Morgan Barron is happy, a little bit of monkey off the back situation to score a goal at 5-on-5, and also at such an important part of that game too, that second goal to go up to secure that lead even more. It was huge at that point in the game, right? Because again, one bounce and you're back to square one if it goes the wrong way. So following that to the net, that's the sort of goal that I'd show the kids that I coach, right? It's like, that's why you go to the net, right? But you can see that though it was just like a monkey off the back situation, they're not done, right? Like he really wants to push that line to continue to be better, because they know that they can be one of the more effective fourth lines in the NHL.
For sure. And I spoke about it last night on the Illegal Curve postgame show, but Rasmus Kupari, at least this year, had kind of remodeled his game. I mean, he's not hurt, so he might be back in on Monday, but he's kind of remodeled his game a little bit to a forechecking penalty killing type, like a real fourth line grinder type, if you want to put it that way. Obviously, we know about the skill and the speed, and he's got 2 goals on the year. But after last year going that long stretch without a goal, I think the Jets coaching staff maybe talked with Rasmus Kupari before the offseason and kind of said, hey, if you're not going to produce, you need to affect the game in other areas, or else you're not going to have a job. And he's clearly done that, right? And David Gustafsson stepped in last night, did the exact same thing. So really, really nice game from that fourth line. Nice to see Morgan Barron get rewarded. Excuse me. And Barron and Iafallo, I thought, were great on the penalty kill, like I said before. Phyllis, good morning, everyone listening in. Great game last night. Nice to see many of you again at the game. Yes, it was nice to see you, Phyllis. Thank you for stopping by. And let's talk about Nikolai Ehlers and the second line. Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti actually getting on the score sheet last night, and Vladislav Meskov, for that matter. I forgot about the 5th goal. The entire line getting on the board. What did you see from that line? Nikolai Ehlers, rusty on Wednesday, a lot better in this game, and Cole Perfetti, who might be featured in our Trending Up segment later on in the show. I have a feeling, but what did you see from that second line?
Yeah, I thought they were really good. I thought that, Nikolai Ehlers looked significantly better than he did on Wednesday, but who didn't? Let's be real. The thing that, was exciting for me, though, about watching that line is, you and I were kind of joshing around, but we weren't really kidding all that much when you were like, did Nikita Chibrikov unlock Cole Perfetti, right? Because we were starting to see a little bit of chemistry from that line. We were starting to see that, maybe there was some compatibility there with the different types of play styles and how aggressive Nikita Chibrikov is on pucks and how smart Cole Perfetti is with placing them once they've been kind of retrieved and sort of contributing to that aggressive retrieval in a bit more of a cerebral way and everything. All that's to say, it's nice to see that Cole Perfetti looked good yesterday. I know that he can play well with Nikolai Ehlers, and many people know that that's not my ideal line combination for the Winnipeg Jets, but hey, if they can continue to play this way and that top line can continue to play the way they have over this stretch and in this sample, fine by me. I'm good. But I think that they all had a really good game together, and it's nice to see that after only one full game of reunion that right off the hop, they were back to one of the better versions of themselves, in my opinion. You know, all of their goals were very, very different. Cole Perfetti's comes off of an interesting kind of play along the boards, a strong enough forecheck. It's not like any crazy. It's not like it happens all because of the forecheck. But then that's what good teams do is you capitalize on those mistakes. And it was basically 1-for-1, the nail in the coffin from the Anaheim game, right? Bad turnover, bad irresponsible turnover by the defenseman, and Cole Perfetti capitalizes on it immediately. And so that was a great goal to have. Nikolai Ehlers obviously was a power play goal, so it's a little bit different. But Vlad Nemestikov was not a power play goal, but he was out with a power play unit. Yeah, because I was like, that's not right. Yeah. But so it wasn't necessarily that line was going out there and shredding the Minnesota Wild, but all of those players, you could tell they were feeling it yesterday. They all had some really good, that tip from Vlad Nemestikov might even be my favorite goal of the game. I'm not going to lie. Like, that was such a nice one.
Nice.
And so, like, I think all those players were just kind of at that level of compete that they wanted to be yesterday. And you could see they have the talent to contribute.
100%. And excuse me, that line, I think with Nikita Chibrikov, their forechecking got a lot better. And like you said, we weren't sure if it was because of Chibrikov or what was kind of happening there. I think Cole Perfetti is kind of been forechecking really well as of late, which is something new.
He's an underrated forechecker. I agree with you 100%. I love watching that guy.
I didn't say all that. Whoa.
Hey, I will. I
know.
Okay, great forechecker is a bit ridiculous, but I think that I like watching him when he doesn't have the puck. I think there's a lot left to grow into there, but there's the potential to do it. I'm seeing things that make me believe that there's so much potential for him to turn into a really strong, like, possession acquisition, kind of tough to get the puck away from, sort of, you know, the way that we talk about the top line.
Yes, the top line is definitely that. Here's what Scott O'Neill had to say first on Nikolai Ehlers returning from injury. Obviously, he was rusty on Wednesday. He did play in that game, though, but looking more like himself on this night. And then the second line, he talked about kind of the forechecking element that we just discussed here. Here's Scott O'Neill after the game.
Yeah, I mean, when you see his speed like that, when he puts it on display, it's nerve-wracking for the opposition, and especially the defenders that have to play that side of the ice. And he pushes people back, and that it just creates offensive zone time for that group. And, you know, I thought those three were, you know, they did a really good job. Spent a lot of time down that end of the rink, and they got rewarded for it.
I think you've talked about that line as a strength, even forechecking despite their size before it turns into a goal for them in that case today. What did you see in that particular play with Perfetti's goal?
Yeah, you know, that was one of the things we had harped on kind of prior to the game about our pressure. If you're going to go after a team that's tired, the pressure is the big part of it. It's taking away their time and space and getting after them. And that's exactly what the Fets got on them. Their pressure, they got down quickly, didn't allow Minnie to kind of make the next play, and created the turnover and is in the back of the net. So that's kind of part of, you know, those guys that when they do it, when they're moving like that, they can be very effective. The other side of things for me, I thought 4 lines were going tonight. I know I mentioned that to you guys. That'd probably be the thing for me. It's probably the first time in a while that we've had all 4 lines going one right after the other, and that was that continued momentum, sort of shift to shift.
So there it is, Scott O'Neill on Nikolai Ehlers, the second line, and kind of that continued momentum from shift to shift that we definitely saw last night and maybe haven't seen in a while from the Winnipeg Jets, where when every line is going, the Lowry line goes out and wears down an opponent for a minute, and then the Ehlers line comes out and kind of takes over and has all this time and space to work with. And it was really, really great performance from all 4 forward lines. And Cole Perfetti, taking advantage of a brutal turnover, to put it lightly, and scoring that goal. The penalty kill went 4 for 4. And I asked you last week, Lyss, because the Jets penalty kill went 4 for 4 last Saturday against the Montreal Canadiens. And I asked both you and Jacob, was this just Connor Hellebuyck killing penalties, or did you see anything different? I'm going to ask the exact same question here today. The Jets went 4 for 4. Was this just Connor Hellebuyck, or do you think that the Jets' penalty kill defensive structure actually kind of held the Wild in check on this night?
Yeah, I believe in coincidences and I believe in luck, and I don't believe in 8 strokes of luck in 2 back-to-back Hockey Night in Canada games at home at Canada Life Center. So there's definitely, I think, a lot of smart decision-making going on with the Winnipeg Jets. I think that it helps when you have internal competition. What I mean by that is this team has a good power play, so I think it helps them understand what it takes to neutralize such an important threat like that. So I think there's a lot of thinking that goes on. You can watch where their minds are at all times. And I just think that some of the guys on this team are just such underrated thinkers. That's a ridiculous thing to say, but it is true. Like even Adam Lowry, that one break that he had, that, oh my gosh, I know everyone in that Canada Life Center, when he lost that puck, when he was swinging around to his forehand, holy smokes, everyone was just, it was devastating. It really was. But like that only happens because he makes an extra poke. Like he managed the defender so well in that particular situation, where a lot of players could have just said, he had enough space and control to shoot that puck down the ice. It could have worked, but he saw an opportunity to take it to the next level, right? Like the secondary decision making, if that makes sense, I think has looked really good on this penalty kill. I struggle a bit with penalty killing structures. I don't always know exactly what's going through the minds of someone like Dean Chenoweth or the players on the team at any given point on a PK. But generally speaking, like I definitely think there is a trend that's going on with this particular penalty killing unit at this time. I think even in the absence of Dylan Sandberg, and also now in the absence of Logan Stanley, he played in the Montreal game when they went 4-for-4. He did not play yesterday when they went 4-for-4, right? So the fact that the staffing has changed, yes, Connor Hellebuyck is still there, so that is something that's worth mentioning, and you brought it up. There is, reason to believe that it is heavily structure related.
Yeah, and Connor Hellebuyck was the first star of the game last night. I don't know who chose the 3 stars, but that was interesting pick. No, I'm kidding. Jacob, Lyss, and I all chose the 3 stars last night. The Winnipeg Sports Talk put our minds together and chose the 3 stars. Connor Hellebuyck, 21st win of the season. That's league leading. 4th shutout of the season. That's league leading. And he loved it. He was doing the whole down on one knee celebration for the first star there. So that was fun. Houde saying, just hope this mini sweep is not another Colorado thing. I will not lie. When I found out that this was the last game against the Wild this season, that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, wow, the Jets just swept the Wild. What if in 4 months we're talking about the Jets and Wild preparing for a playoff series and the Jets swept the Wild? It's going to be like, well, last year they swept Colorado and beat them 7-0 a week before the playoffs. But as Jay Miller says, moving to Monday, Toronto owns the Jets. So this is going to be a really interesting kind of flip of the Jets owning Minnesota. But then
I have a hot take about that.
Okay.
I don't think it's physically possible to own a team in the other conference. The other conference.
Okay.
I don't think they play each other enough. I don't think they play the same opponents enough. I'm not a believer in that. And I'm not saying that from, perspective of like salty Winnipeg or anything like that. I would say there are a decent amount of teams that we could go through that the Winnipeg Jets have beat significantly, down the stretch. Like I guess Columbus, they lost to last week, but before that they hadn't lost in like 7 games against Columbus or something like that. And like, I know Columbus is like a bad team, but Toronto's a good team. Like, I don't believe in owning outside of your division, and conference is fine. But I'm more focused on the matchups that are more regular and that have a lot more like intercontinuity and stuff like that. I don't buy into that for a second. The Jets lose again on Monday. Okay. Fair enough, but then that's it. Then they don't see Toronto again for at least another 6 to 8 months. So like, okay,
I will say
I can't be bothered by it. Sorry,
it's a little bit. That's just cope because it's the Leafs. It's just like
shut up.
I will say the Mark Scheifele thing, like this makes it a little bit more of a, because he did the nothing's better than beating the Leafs, and the Jets haven't beat them since.
They beat them that day.
Well, okay, yeah.
They haven't beat them since. So that's like 5 losses in a row then or something then, hey?
Yeah, that was 2021. That was December. The Super Saturday in the city of Winnipeg, where the Bombers beat the Riders and then the Jets beat the Leafs. That was a day. But it's been that long since the Jets have beat the Leafs, so it's going to be interesting. They lost to them
later that January, and then would have had to have been both matchups the season after.
And the season after, and now this season they've lost already.
Yeah, that's a lot in a row. Fair enough, but it's like the teams themselves. Like Blake Wheeler was still on the top line when that happened. Like it's a different team. There's not enough. I don't know. I can't quite get on board. That is a lot in a row. And again, if I said earlier when we we're talking about the penalty kill that I believe in luck, but I don't believe in luck 8 times in a row. Okay, maybe I should be taking a seat here for a second. But my logic still stands, I think. But there is definitely some level of largeness to this out of conference game for sure.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. 2 Canadian teams as well. Marquee matchup on a Monday at 1 p.m. Love to see it. But I will say the Winnipeg Jets are first in the NHL now, alone at the top of the standings. The Jets social media had a funny post last night. Neil Pionk with the hands over the face with the home alone, but alone in first in the NHL standings. Excuse me. Going big picture list. Where are we at with the Winnipeg Jets? They had the 15-1 start. Since then, they're 9-9-1. But sprinkled in there in that 500 stretch, they had an 8-1 win over the Bruins. They had this 5-0 win against the Wild. They just have these kind of moments of the team that we saw in the first 16 games, but hasn't really been that consistent. Now they were missing Nikolai Ehlers. They have missed Dylan Sandberg. Where are you kind of at with the Jets here at the holiday break or one game before it?
Don't ask me that. Don't ask me that, right? Because it's so hard. Like, we're going to the game yesterday, you, myself, Jacob, we're in the car, we're talking, whatever. And, you know, it's our duty and responsibility as contributors to conversations in this space to try and have some objectivity and to try and have, you know, not be too squirrely with, you know, what draws our attention at any given time. But we were talking about, you know, if they have another stinker like they did in Anaheim, is it time to start having conversations XYZ that were like deeply difficult, fundamental conversations about the makeup of the Winnipeg Jets and their longevity and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And then they win, and then we don't have those conversations, right? Because I feel like that's what keeps happening is we keep getting to like an almost boiling point, and then someone shuts off the element. And you know when someone shuts off the element from a nearly boiling pot, it's not like it stops right away, right? It simmers, but it's not getting closer to boiling, right? So it's like, right. I feel like that was like a 85% metaphor that was like almost there, but like we keep almost getting to a point where we feel like this team might need to make some very drastic changes in order to get to that next level that they want to. But then they have strong performances like they do against the Bostons of the world, right? And you're like, okay, this team clearly has some ability to jump on XYZ. You know, people in the chat were mentioning that this was a really tired Minnesota Wild team. That's not the Winnipeg Jets' fault. It's their job to go out there and make them, you know, embarrassed that they were so tired, right? And that's what they did yesterday. But in terms of big picture with this team, do I think that the Winnipeg Jets going out and playing their best can go out and beat the teams they need to beat when those teams are also playing their best? I still don't think so, which is why I'm a little bit like, I haven't seen enough Winnipeg Jets hockey at best on best to really feel fully confident in that assessment. So there's no banner being hung. I'm not making space even for a banner to be hung just yet, right? So I'm a little bit, I don't know.
That is fair. That is a fair answer because it is, as many people pointed out, it's very early. Rob Mahoney wants 50 points for Christmas and that's it. Jets can do it with a win on Monday. But I'm kind of with you. I mean, the Jets have had this kind of up and down nature and wins against really good teams, losses against really bad teams. This is what teams kind of go through. As Doug said, 6-3-1 in their last 10. That's not too bad compared to the rest of the Central Division. That's not too bad as well. They took advantage. And again, we tried to stay away from the schedule excuse, you know, the 15 straight games in different cities between the road trips and then coming back for one game and going on the road. The Jets were the tired team that was banged up when Dylan Sandberg and Nikolai Ehlers were out of the lineup and they were playing 15 straight games in different cities, right? Now, just because the Minnesota Wild come in banged up and tired, having played the night before, they're like that. You can't fault the Jets for that when maybe they're bleeding points earlier in the season because of the schedule as well. Like if we're just going to throw the schedule excuse out the window, let's do it for both sides. Right. So the Jets did what they were supposed to last night. They absolutely dominated, not only at 5-on-5, but special teams as well. 4 for 4 on the penalty kill, 2.5 for 5, let's say, on the power play, because they scored the third one right after the player got out of the box. And yeah, the Jets got through their toughest stretch of the schedule without a top 4 defenseman and top 6 winger. Homestand in January will determine what moves Chevy makes before the trade deadline. That's a great question. And that 8-game homestand in January, and they play like 11 home games in January or something. Like
it's a lot. Yeah, it's weird.
They are through the tough part of their schedule. And I don't know. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic than you are on the Jets. I mean, there's no secret that they still need additions to be like a true cup contender, if that's the conversation we're having. But I think that they're a top 5 team in the NHL, and I don't think that it's that wild to say, wild pun intended, to say that here at the holiday break. And that's like, a lot of people will say they aren't because they had the 15-1 start, and then since then they've fallen off, and the 15-1 start was just kind of a fluke, right?
I don't believe in mistakes happening 15 times in a row. I really don't.
Right.
Like I understand why people, you look at samples and choose stretches, but I hate getting too selective about stuff. Like, when you and I sat down and last week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks before, you brought this up where we talked about the different kind of eras of the Winnipeg Jets, like their season so far in the stretches, and we look for patterns, right? We're not choosing games that fit our narrative grouped together and being like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, no, we're trying to go based on behavior, not based on outcome, which is the more telling and important part. So I agree with you. I just, we know that this Winnipeg Jets team is a fine regular season team. Like, we've been there. But what I keep coming back to, and everyone's going to get so sick of me for bringing this up, is that yes, they need to take another step and whatever. But in order to take on who? The NHL sucks this year. Like, I guess we'll talk more Western Conference, because if they were to run into anyone from the Eastern Conference, it would be in the Cup final, and that team would have clearly figured something out. Something like the Devils, like, I think that there's definitely some potential there. But like, other than like the Oilers, like, we're seeing the Wild's not true colors, but we're seeing their flaws. We're seeing that they have holes, and the Oilers are a bit different because their holes are evident. Just a matter of how much can they score to make up for those holes. And like, you go through the league, you go through the Western Conference, there's no 2020 Tampa Bay Lightning right now. There's no 2013 Chicago Blackhawks. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that this is an interesting combination of, I think they're good and can take the next step. And I think the gap that they could give themselves by taking the next step is not to catch up with someone else. It's to get ahead of other teams, which I think is huge.
Yes. Just real quick, I said it after they beat the Jets. The game went to overtime, but the game wasn't close. I think Vegas is the best team in the West. Their defense core is absolutely loaded. Jack Eichel's a stud. When Mark Stone's healthy, their forward core is elite. Aiden Hill has won a cup. I think he can be, the goaltender for them. But yeah, there is lots of parity in the league right now. And Vegas, like, I don't know. I just saw another level there. And of course, the Jets were missing Ehlers and Sandberg. You have to put that kind of asterisk on all of those 9 games that they played without those two, because that's a top 6 forward and a top 4 D. But yeah, I think Vegas is the best team in the West. Yeah. I do quickly want to say just on one thing. I know you brought up the playoffs, and I brought this up on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on Saturday morning. I know I'm repeating myself a lot this weekend because I'm talking a lot into microphones about the Winnipeg Jets. But anyways, one thing that we've seen in the playoffs the last 2 years is the Jets win the first game and lose the next 4, kind of reverse sweep, and they're done, right? Yeah. Sorry to rehash it, everyone. But I will say 2 games this year that I thought the Jets bounced back really well was the Florida home and home, where they lost 5-0. They had a day off, then a practice day, and then played Florida and played maybe their best game of the season still to this day was that game against Florida. They won 6-3, but they elevated their style of play and beat the Florida Panthers pretty handily on that night. And this game where they come off a terrible loss to the Anaheim Ducks. Yes, you're not playing the Anaheim Ducks in the playoffs, but again, you get a day off, you get a practice day, and then you just defeat or dominate, or whatever adjective you want to use, the Minnesota Wild, because they are tired. They played the night before. They're banged up. And yes, you're not going to be playing a team coming off a back-to-back in the playoffs. I know that this argument has a lot of holes in it, but I think the ability to bounce back is something that Rick Bowness didn't see, and made that very well known with his pushback comment. But we haven't seen it in the last 2 years. The Jets have not responded from a loss in the playoffs in the last 2 years, and seeing when they can bounce back. And Jacob said it with that Florida home and home, that was their chance to kind of prove that they can do it. Even before, like months and months before the playoffs. Obviously, the games closer to the playoffs are going to matter more in terms of this, but we're seeing signs of it early here of a team that can bounce back and should be able to, should they lose a game in the playoffs, which is likely. But
well, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, actually, on the drive home, talking about, how this year it's been a thing that the Winnipeg Jets have had some slower starts to their games, and that their first periods have been a little bit rough. Last year, the Winnipeg Jets had some rough third periods. They had some really bad, like, just no compete level to finish off a game when it was either really close or when they were down by a little bit. Like, when you were going into a third period with the Winnipeg Jets, I don't think they blew a lot of leads last year. We talked about this, but if the Winnipeg Jets were down 3-2 going into the third, I wasn't like, guys, they can still do this, like there wasn't as much confidence instilled by the group. But I'm just looking at some of the results, and obviously they had that 4-game losing streak that was really rough, where they couldn't put pucks in the back of the net or anything like that or whatnot. But we've circled a couple dates on the calendars of games that, ahead of, again, looking back at this in, revisionistly, I could be like, oh yeah, they lost this game. They lost 6-4 to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then they went and they beat Detroit 6-2 on Wednesday afterwards.
Right.
This fits my narrative. No, that's not. But we circled that Florida game in the calendar. We circled all of the Minnesota games in the calendar. We circled the Dallas Super Saturday game in the calendar before these games happened. And these games were the Winnipeg Jets needed to compete at the highest level. They have, in my opinion. They've had some rougher stretch, and losing back-to-back to Vegas and Dallas is probably the lowest point of the season for me, just in the sense of, like, yes, they're banged up. We could talk about all these things, but those are games that you want to win, and they didn't. They weren't even, really close games either. The Vegas one that one had some back and forth for sure, but it wasn't the Winnipeg Jets' best performance when they want to give their best performance against a Vegas. But, like, I think this team has a little bit more, not to use like a hockeyism here, but like resilience as a group. Like, I really do think the mental toughness has increased. And I think a lot of guys are coming out and playing in the roles that aren't necessarily the roles that the team has carved out for them, but the roles that team on that given night needs to win. And that's what's different about this Jets club for me.
Yes, absolutely. Do we want the President's Trophy? Yes. That's one of the hardest trophies to win in the sport. I mean, there's only two, I guess, but that would be pretty intense if you can hang a President's Trophy banner. I know there's the curse, but come on. I mean, I'm
going to come back next Sunday. I'm going to do some math of, like, do some probability here in terms of, like, okay, it's a curse or whatever. It's not quite a 1 in 16 chance of winning the Stanley Cup if you make the playoffs, because there's slightly higher odds the higher in the standings you go or whatever. But in terms of, like, how often that team should win, you're probably looking at 12% of the time at the absolute most that team should be winning, which they still do. So, like, if you want to look at, like, the grand scheme, like, I don't believe in curses if they could be debunked by math. So I'm going to do some math and I'll get back to you on that. I want the President's Trophy because that means the Winnipeg Jets are winning lots of hockey games and will hopefully continue to win more hockey games.
Exactly. Exactly. Follow for more. Exactly. I will just quickly say, I'm scrolling over to Puckpedia here. A lot of people are saying, talking about the trade deadline, Jets might add front end or the back end. This trade deadline might be the most important one the Jets will face, Elias McCracken says. I just quickly want to say the Jets don't have their second round pick this year due to the Tyler Toffoli trade last year. They also don't have a 4, which I don't know where that pick went, but it says Dallas currently has it. I don't know what trade that was.
It'd be a fun game I could go through in my head.
Colin Miller 4th round pick is next year, 2026. They don't have their 4th, and that's the Colin Miller deal. So the Jets are kind of short on picks this year compared to last year, Will they look to trade their one? I think is a question that we'll revisit obviously closer to the trade deadline. It's going to be interesting because without a second round pick, that kind of does change things. Not having a pick until the third round, you'd need to take a pretty big swing, I think. And but the Jets also have a ton of deadline cap space. They currently have 4.9 million in just cap space in general, and deadline cap space 13.8 million. So they're going to have a lot of room to buy if they want, maybe even broker some contracts as we've seen if they wanted to, as the number one team in the NHL.
As we've seen, not from
like
the Jets.
Yes, yeah, like
as
Arizona,
we've seen from other teams.
Yes, like the worst teams in the league. But like I'm just saying, they have so much flexibility.
Matt Hyman says it was for Vlad Nemesnikov. That makes sense.
Wow, nice, good call. Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm really interested to have those discussions. It's not a discussion that we'll dive into today. We're going to get into our trending up, trending down segment right away here. But without a second round pick, with 14 million in deadline cap space, the Jets are going to be a player, and they're going to be the number one team in the NHL or top 5 at the time. So it's going to be really interesting. Let's get into it. The trending up, trending down segment, always my favorite part of the show. Let me get the read up here. This is trending up or trending down, a segment where we outline who is trending up or down for the Winnipeg Jets over the past week of play. The rules are simple. Not all 3 of us, just Lyss and I will each pick a player who has been trending up or trending down, and we cannot repeat an answer that has already been said. To make things tougher, we also can't repeat any answer that was said last week. Just for context, last week we said Triberkov, Nemesnikov, and Morrissey were trending up. Barron, DeMello, and Heinola were trending down. So those players are off the board. And the most important rule of this segment is that all of you who have joined us here live on YouTube must hit the chat room and let us know your picks for trending up, trending down. Lyss, I will let you go first on this one. Who do you have for trending up this week within the Winnipeg Jets organization?
Okay, I should have come up with better for you. I am going to give the trending up to the support staff of the Winnipeg Jets, being Davis Payne and Dean Chenoweth, the special teams coaches.
Okay.
Coaches Winnipeg Jets scoring
nice.
2 goals yesterday, really early into those power plays, where I understand that, they had a couple of power plays where they didn't score. They had some, their 5-on-3 and the power plays that whole chunk, the 4 and 5 before and after that, right? Like
right.
Not perfect, not everything, but 2 face-off wins on 2 power plays to execute your set plays and scoring on those is a big positive for me. And the Winnipeg Jets power play was a little bit slower a few weeks ago, and I think they're starting to trend up a little bit. And then the penalty kill being nearly perfect, down the stretch here has been really awesome. So I give my flowers to the special teams. I am a human being, and I think about the 2023 Winnipeg Jets, 2024 Winnipeg Jets pretty frequently. We know what could have happened had the Winnipeg Jets had a little bit more special teams gusto last year. I'm loving it. So good for Davis Payne, good for Dean Chenoweth. I think that their special teams are doing a really good job of leveraging the bodies that they have right now and the skill sets that they have right now, which is exactly what you want to do. That's who gets it for me this week.
I love it. We have to get creative because, like we said, we cannot pick players who were picked last week. So we're going to go off the board a little bit. My answer is also going to be off the board, but I just want to give some honorable mentions to players that we can actually say on the Winnipeg Jets. I want to say Cole Perfetti. I want to say Nikolai Ehlers. These are not my answers. These are just players that I think are trending up. I want to say Colin Miller as well. But my answer is Kieran Walton, who is third in the OHL in points, I believe, right now. He's having an unbelievable year. He had that highlight reel goal that I'm sure everyone saw on their social media feeds. He is like a 6'6", 230-pound center who has really great hands. And both him and Kevin He are now top 10 in OHL scoring. So the Jets, with some late round picks, Kevin He in the 4th and Kieran Walton in the 6th, I believe. they're trending. Okay, just Kieran Walton, Kevin He as well, signing his entry level contract this week. I think he should get an honorable mention as well. But Kieran Walton
Well,
is my
everybody's getting
up.
honorable mention, so might as well give out some more.
Yeah, the list for who we can't say next week. No, I'm kidding. But I'm gonna go Kieran Walton.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick. The 2024 North American draft class of the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, yeah, Alphonse Frey didn't end up cracking Sweden's roster of the World Juniors, which was interesting. I mean, if we want to do a full prospect report, we could, but yeah, that was another year where the Winnipeg Jets didn't have a 1 and also didn't have a 2, or did have a 2 with Alphonse Frey, but they did not have their 1. And this year they don't have a 2. So that'll be really interesting. Trending down the Grinch. This is a great answer here from Chuck. And
Rob Mahoney says there are no rules, just guidelines when it comes to this segment. We made the segment, so we made the rules, so we get to break the rules.
Exactly. And we wanted to get a little bit creative this week. Why not? So I'm gonna go with Kieran Walton. Christmas dinners trending up as well. Absolutely. Lyss, I'll let you go first for trending down as well, because this one's a lot tougher coming off of a 5-0.
Yeah, it is tougher. I'm gonna go with the white meat on turkey that you have at Christmas. Not looking forward to that. Not a big white meat guy on Christmas turkey. Not a big turkey guy in general. Not a huge fan. But my other answer is going to be someone that we have picked for this segment before, but I checked not last week. My trending down is going to go to Hayden Fleury. I think Hayden Fleury has been really good when, since the Dylan Samberg injury, stepping up into that pairing with Neil Pionk, he's been good. But I think in this last little stretch of games, that pairing, obviously, again, yesterday, they were great. They were. But I find that his puck handling, I just feel like has been a little bit less clean lately than he probably wants it to be. And then not what I want it to be, right? Like, I think his neutral zone play has been a little bit suboptimal. I think he spent a little bit more time in his own zone than he would like. I feel like a lot of this comes down to like preventable situations. I think they've been good in their own zone. I think he's managed the slot really well. I think he's managed his high to the ice pretty well, but it's only because he's in that situation that he sort of put himself into. I think when he's on the ice, the breaking up of the puck has been a little bit weaker in this past week. So he's going to get my trending down for this week.
Okay, sweet. My trending down is going to be his defense partner, Neil Pionk. Neil Pionk did have a strong game last night. He had the goal and he had the assist, but I agree. Going back just one game, he had the brutal turnover against the Anaheim Ducks. And I will say that Neil Pionk's numbers and underlying numbers were very, very good with Dylan Samberg on his pair. And Hayden Fleury, for what he's done stepping into the Jets lineup, was still supposed to be the 8th defenseman coming into training camp. Like, it's just injuries that has kind of forced him up the lineup. So I think that pairing is going to get back to the level they were at once Dylan Samberg returns, which he's probably going to start skating December 27th. Scarter Neal said, maybe. Don't quote me on it. Don't quote Scarter Neal on it either, he said. But I will say that Neil Pionk, for me, gets the trending down. He did have the power play goal last night, but it's not enough for me because of the turnover in Anaheim. So I'm going to go, we're sweeping that pairing, the second pairing.
Yeah. And I do, we're not trying to say that, and that's the point of this segment. This is not the worst Winnipeg Jets and the best Winnipeg Jets, right? It's just in terms of the sample that we've seen prior to the past week and in terms of relative net change, right? And I just think I think Hayden Fleury still is punching a little bit above his weight, and I think he was from the beginning, and it was great. And now I think he's regressing a little bit down to where he probably is most likely to be at. Keep in mind, this is a guy who is probably going to be on the Moose in September, right? Like, this is not a second pairing NHL defenseman in terms of his ceiling right now, but he's looked okay. And Elias is saying that, his confidence looks like it's growing. We're seeing a little bit more, I think, of that offensive upside, not in terms of actually getting onto the scoring sheet, but a couple of moves on the blue line in the offensive zone. It's more the neutral zone that I've really been struggling with them. I think that their handling of the puck in the breakout is not where it needs to be for a second pairing in the NHL. So I stand by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, I did forget another player for trending up but this is just a bad segue into our next topic. Braden Yeager, could have said him as well because he's
Fair
Captain
enough.
Canada. He's Captain Canada for the upcoming World Junior Championship starting on Boxing Day as Canada takes on Finland. It's in Ottawa this year, so Canadian World Juniors. He's the captain. Super excited for that. I know a lot of Jets fans are as well. I mean, last year the Jets had the captain of Team USA who won gold, Ricker McGorty, traded him for the captain now of Team Canada, and we'll see what happens with Braden Yeager and Team Canada. But Lyss, what are you kind of expecting not only out of Braden Yeager, but just the World Juniors in general? Nice. It's always awesome when it's in Canada. It feels like Canada cares about it the most, or maybe a little bit too much. But Braden Yeager, the captain of Team Canada.
Yeah, I'm super psyched for him, and it's funny. I think Connor might have done this by design. I know you talked about this yesterday on the Illegal Curve show, but I think a lot of people have listened to the Blake Wheeler Andrew Ladd podcast that came out this week, where they spoke about leadership with leadership coaches and everything like that, and I think I am starting to probably overstate the importance of leadership just based on how these past few years have gone for the Winnipeg Jets and some of the changes that we've seen. So having guys in the organization that are trusted leaders amongst their peers, I think is a really good thing. I'm excited for Braden Yeager based on everything that I've seen from scouts that I follow and everything like that. So true. I'm a Festival girl through and through, Spency. Could not agree more. Can't wait for Festival this year. But I think a lot of people are super excited about him. The WHL is one of the lesser, well, the OHL dominates the CHL in terms of popularity, in terms of eyes, in terms of views, and everything. A lot of people were like, hell yeah, Braden Yeager should be the captain of this team, right? Like he garners a lot of attention, even from out of market media and from out of market scouts and stuff, which is awesome. Really excited for him. I think that this World Junior team, granted, I don't follow junior hockey as closely as I might like to. It's, you only have so many hours in a day to spend watching hockey, but I really like this team's defense core. They're missing some of I tweeted about this yesterday, but like Zane Parek's not even on this D core, and it looks insane. Oliver Bonk and Sam Dickinson and some of the younger guys too. There are a couple of like undrafted guys that are on this roster. Those are my favorite players to watch in these tournaments, are the undrafted kids, guys with the bubbles, the guys with the cages that show up. I love to see what they can do. It's a fun showcase for them. You can't put too much stock into an all-star game, all-star tournament, for lack of better definition, because that's exactly what this is. But it's lots of fun, and I really like how excited everyone gets about the World Juniors, and Jets fans should be uber excited about the representation they're getting from Braden Yeager this year. We don't have prospects from the Winnipeg Jets organization represented anywhere else, so might as well give us a good one and a really prominent role if we're going to only get one guy in the tournament, right?
The captain of Team Canada. Yeah. And Braden Yeager, I mean, we did the deep dive on him when the trade happened this summer. So if people haven't checked that out already and they're looking for maybe a better explanation on the type of player that Braden Yeager is, go check it out. It's on the WST YouTube channel. But he's a two-way center. He has a really great shot. He's going to be playing with some really talented players in this tournament as well. So maybe we could see that playmaking shine through a little bit more. And as the captain, like you said, with the leadership, especially Canada not medaling last year, the tournament's in Canada, feels like there's a lot of pressure on Canada to medal this year, because if you're Shane Malloy said it in his conversation with Hustler on the show this week, for Canada, you can't not medal 2 years in a row. Like that's just unacceptable from a Hockey Canada perspective, right? So that there's a lot of pressure on them at home to get a medal, and Braden Yeager is going to be the guy leading them. I'm super excited for the tournament and to see how Braden Yeager looks in Team Canada colors. This was a super fun show. What are you looking forward to on Monday when the Winnipeg Jets travel to Toronto to take on the Maple Leafs and look for their first win since December 5th, 2021 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Lyss?
Yeah, no, I think that, they're going to have a good game. Like, I think that's a bit of a ridiculous thing to say because, what does that really mean? But the Toronto Maple Leafs are a fun hockey team, but they're also a little bit banged up right now too. They're missing their number one goaltender. They are
maybe they're
possibly asterisk, maybe missing Austin Matthews, right? And I believe they just dropped a stinker to the one and only New York Islanders.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Yes.
Right. So I think that they're also a team that's hungry to want to win. The Winnipeg Jets are hungry to want to win. And while I wouldn't put this in the same category as, for example, the Florida back-to-back game in terms of how important it is in terms of wins, you know that this team has circled this game on the calendar just based on how, like we've talked about, and how many games they've lost to this team consecutively here, and also how many of these guys are from that particular area, how many of these guys probably grew up Leafs fans. It's just naturally what the Toronto effect is when you play those teams. So I'm looking forward to seeing if the Winnipeg Jets, can put together another solid 4-line effort, right? Because Scott Arniel yesterday, he was not defensive, but he kind of chided the media a little bit when they're like, is this the best full 60-minute effort you put together in a while? He's like, not really. Like we've played good hockey, and Cole Perfetti also said a similar thing in his response where, they're like, we haven't been playing horribly down the stretch, which I agree with, but back-to-back top to bottom solid performances going into a holiday break, I think would be huge for this team, especially knowing that, upon your return, Logan Stanley will be healthy again. Dylan Sandberg is going to be skating again. Like you're starting to get back to where you want to be, which I think is really exciting. So I think it's going to be a good game, and I think they're just going to want to close out this stretch with a nice positive note, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to want to do that too. So it's not enough, but I think they want to build on this momentum and show that they're not just a hot and cold streaky team.
Yeah, and being the number one team in the NHL going into the holiday break with back-to-back wins over the Wild and Leafs, I know a lot of Jets fans would love that for Christmas. So that would be awesome. And waiters, take a look here at the profile photo, Leafs
Classic
and Jets,
waiters.
and I see a Go Jets Go there. So there's a little Jets against the Leafs, and waiters clearly choosing sides here. You love to see that. That's funny. Thanks for joining us, waiters. Thanks for joining us, everyone. On this Sunday morning show. We really appreciate it. And yes, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone. Enjoy the week. We'll be back next Sunday, breaking down the Jets game against the Leafs, maybe the first couple games of the Team Canada World Juniors. And then the Jets are back in action next Saturday against the Ottawa Senators. So a third straight Hockey Night in Canada game. I'm super excited for that, but enjoy your holiday break, everyone. Merry Christmas to you all. Lyss, what do you have planned over the kind of short little break we get from the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I'm just going to probably sit in this corner back here in my room and wait until they come back. No, I have obviously some family stuff kind of lined up over Christmas, which is fabulous. I celebrate with my family. Very fortunate to have a lot of family close by, health of my grandparents and everything. So getting to spend as much time as I can with them. Going to the Moose game today, so that'll be great. We're not even missing Jets hockey yet, and still gotta get that fix in there. So they had a big win in the shootout to end their little skid on Friday, which was awesome. So hoping that they also are trending up. I'd love to put the Manitoba Moose in the trending up category. Can't confidently do that yet, but would love to throw them in there. But yeah, nothing too crazy over the holidays for me. Just hoping to spend some time with my family and watch some World Junior hockey. Watch some Braden Yeager with that C on his chest, and I was going to make some form of joke about, the C on your chest and how much of it is owed to you and how much of it is embarrassing to get it taken away from you. But we won't go down there. I'm not doing that today. I won't do that to you, Connor. I promise.
At 10:06, dropping that just on the way out, just kind of a slight jab on the way out. Yeah. I mean, the chat is all over the Blake Wheeler stuff right now. So it's interesting. Anyways. Yes, have a great holiday break, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us here live on a Sunday morning. We'll be back next Sunday after the Jets and Senators and the Jets and Leafs tomorrow. Hopefully the Jets can pull out a win. I know a lot of Jets fans are hoping for that against the Leafs going into the holiday break. That would be a special one. I'll be on the Illegal Curve postgame show actually after that game with Ezra Ginsburg. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we're talking about a Jets win. And thank you everyone for joining us from Lyss, Jacob, and myself. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and we will see you all next Sunday. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy the holiday break.